There is no part of my life that doesn't have Sai Baba in it. You know, I mean, these days it's different than it was years ago. I mean, whatever your life is about is Sai Baba. Everything in your life is Sai Baba. But, when Sai Baba comes, he can open up things and close them just as easy as if you opened a book and closed it. He'll open up the crown, he'll open up the heart, he'll open up whatever. It's, the difficult thing for people to understand is that they really aren't separate. They really are one, and all this other stuff is something that they imagined along the way. The bliss, the experiences, it comes as a full package. It's the gnosis, it's the, the Gnostic thing, he is, I mean, Baba didn't come to me and say, hey, guess what? I'm God. It didn't happen that way. You know darn good and well who you're standing in front of. Hands that serve are better than lips that pray. I believe in that wholeheartedly. And I know that is a greater spiritual path today than reading 10,000 books.
So is your life a prayer, or do you incorporate any form of prayer into your life?
I don't know any time when the mind is thinking that it's not praying.
If somebody listening to you talk wanted to know how they could find out more about Sai Baba, come closer to Sai Baba, feel Sai Baba more in their hearts and minds, what would you suggest for them?
Ask. Ask and never stop asking. Ask. Look. Look. Just keep looking and keep asking. I guarantee you, you'll come. I don't have to make this up, because I'll tell you something, and I'll tell you very clear. He sits residing right behind your objective consciousness. All the time. Mix their stuff and other people's stuff.
He is a teacher, problem solver, and master of information technology. And Dan Schmidt of Temecula, California, is also a gifted spiritual seeker who is constantly aware of holy man Sri Satya Sai Baba in his life. Welcome to Souljourns. This interview was recorded in Cleveland, Ohio in February 2003.
Everybody has their own story. Everybody has their own relationship.
Dan Schmidt is our guest, coming from the San Diego area of Southern California. He's been a Baba devotee for quite some time and has had some wonderful stories involving Satya Sai Baba from southern India. And Dan, if it's okay, I'd just like to begin by asking you really the question I hope to ask you at the end of this, but I want to start off, what brought you in the first place to Sai Baba?
Well, for me, it was a long time coming. I had known about Sai Baba for about 13 years prior to my really knowing about Sai Baba. I had a background in San Jose. I was working for an organization called the Rosicrucian Order Amorc in San Jose, California, and I worked with them for about 7 years. And so I had an extensive background in both Rosicrucianism, theosophy, mysticism, magic, Kabbalah, science. This is something that is really difficult to talk to an open group about, because some of the things that we did were really not things that you would typically see on the street.
I think this would be a very welcoming group, though. So go ahead.
Well, we're going to talk, I'm going to open up to you about it. This is something that I spent a lot of time with talking to Sai Baba about yesterday, and it seems like the energy is all there for it today. So we'll talk about some of that candidly, if that's okay with the group. Mm-hmm. But at Amorc, a lot of the people that I knew at Amorc. See, I was drawn there essentially because of the Rosicrucian philosophies.
And give us a real brief overview of being a Rosicrucian.
Well, Rosicrucian Amorc was built by Harvey Spencer Lewis, established by Harvey Spencer Lewis. But the Rosicrucian philosophy goes back into, its strongest aspect was in the 16th and 17th century. As an esoteric organization, a very private esoteric organization, and it flourished actually within as more of a secret body in Masonry. Men like Sir Isaac Newton, Francis Bacon, and men like that were really strong proponents of the early Rosicrucian traditions. And it was brought back out by a couple of documents that were distributed in the 16th and 17th century called the Fama Fraternitatis and the Confessio. But its traditions go back and they're really very ancient. I could go into some of this that has to do with histories that are not quite so public, that have to do with traditions that are a part of the East.
But how did you become interested in this? Were you raised?
Well,
by people?
as I grew up, I was more interested in, self-discovery than I was in going to school even. But initially it was through just the ads that they had placed. This whole concept of cosmic consciousness and self-mastery and that. But along the way, I managed to meet some incredible people. I went to what was called RCU at the Rosicrucian Order. And RCU was their Rose Croix University that they put on every summer. And there was a teacher there by the name of Watermeyer, Frater Watermeyer. He was one of the people that helped to collate and compile all the material that Carl Jung distributed. And then those of you who know who Carl Jung is are very familiar with the symbolical systems that he was part of. But Watermeyer was so unique and incredibly different. He was a magician, he was a scientist, he was a philosopher, he was a concert pianist. He was incredibly difficult to get close to. And he put on a couple of classes each year that would just absolutely blow your mind. You would sit there and your jaw would drop and it would not close until the end of the week. I mean, the last year that he put on a class, he put on a 2-week course in the psychology of music and sound that was all about the word. And he says, well, I'm going to try 2 weeks in a row, because used to be, he'd have 1 week, it might be light and color, the psychology and mysticism of light and color, and then another one on the psychology and mysticism of consciousness. And but this was a phenomenal character. And that attracted me, because when I saw him, there was nobody like him.
And
I've
were
never
you
had
also
anybody
attracted
like him.
to theosophy at the same time?
Theosophy, I was attracted, of course, to Madame Blavatsky and to the whole Mahatma thing. But there were so many traditions. I mean, the Kabbalistic traditions I was very fond of. The Eastern traditions came more later, as I developed in that direction. A lot of Rosicrucianism actually stems from the Eastern traditions.
Did they lead you to Sai Baba?
There were people at the Rosicrucian Order Amorc. I mean, we studied everything. That was our thing. There were unique people who discovered and had a mindset to discover every philosophy and extract the good out of it. But there were a number of Sai devotees that actually worked at the park. One was the secretary to Ralph M. Lewis, was a devotee of Sai Baba, and she promoted it. But most of the people that I knew had all read about Sai Baba, and of course I was Kabbalah, I was this, I was that. I had read so many books, I was so smart, I knew all this stuff. I was up at East West Books in Palo Alto, and something drew me over, and I walked over and I pulled out Holy Man and the Psychiatrist, and I saw this picture of this guy. I said, who is that? And I put it back on the shelf, and I pulled it back out, and I looked at it. This was 1975. I mean, I was like, who is this guy, And I put it back on the shelf, and I walked around, and I was over in another section. I walked back over, and I pulled that book out again and looked at it. But I thought, well, this is the guru. And to be quite honest with you, most of us in the Western esoteric traditions and whatever, we have a very difficult time understanding the concept of the guru. And that's a real unfortunate thing. Those who don't understand it have missed the point incredibly. And it's too bad. I mean, I can tell you stories related to that I may get to here in a little bit, but to give you an example, I had a a friend that was very fond that had read the books. I didn't read the books. I just knew this guy. I saw his picture. He's a guru. You know, this is great. You know, he's a guru. I'm sure he's a good guy, but that was their thing. You know, I was more interested in Kabbalah. I knew this tradition and whatever, and I was interested in discovering these things. And it's all, at the time, it was all self-mastery, and you know, you're guru and God. You one-on-one. You know, nobody in between. You know, and that was the Rosicrucian tradition. Now, mind you, they never took into consideration to the fact that they had very many friends and philosophers and whatever that they sit in front of just as much as anybody in the East sits in front of, but that didn't count, you know. But there were a lot of Sai devotees around in the Rosicrucian order.
So it's been almost 30 years since you first saw his form.
Since I first saw his form, but it took me 13 years to come to it from that point.
So you saw it and dismissed it? Was that?
Well, he's like, he was a guru. He was, you know, he was a guru. That's okay. That's okay. That's your thing, you know.
Then what was it years later that brought you to it?
It was many years later, and to be quite honest with you, a couple of times, you know, I'd run across this thing and where he raised, well, the counter from the dead, and I saw this article from the LA Times. I'm going, well, I guess he's probably pretty good. He's probably a little better than most. Oh boy, talk about being off target, you know. But that's what the ego does, and that's what happens when you read too much. You know, it's true. It's true. It's a very difficult thing to overcome. And especially when you have some great friends. One of my mentors, dearest friend, is a fellow by the name of Lamar Kilgore. And in my life, I mean, he was just an absolutely the best friend that I ever had. And I lived with him for some time, and he later became the vice president of AMWORK. And you know, I spent a lot of time with him, showing him Baba videos and whatever later in life as well. And he explained many things to me. You know, very few people know that the Grand Master, the Spanish Grand Master at the time, was a Sai devotee as well. And I had a conversation with a guy in Mexico, at his lodge. He said 70% of the people that were associated with the Sai Center there were members of the Rosicrucian Order AMWORK as well. So I mean, that's an idea. It gives you an idea of how this type of thing goes on. And it actually integrated very well with AMWORK, because AMWORK, founded by Harvey Spencer Lewis, but very few people know that Harvey Spencer Lewis received his so-called PhD from Andhra Pradesh, which was because he helped to found the university there in Andhra Pradesh. And I think, when did he do that? He was 1926. And I'm going, holy mackerel. What are we missing? Yeah. You know, what are we missing?
So it sounds like it took you quite a few years where you were
lot
slowly
of years to get
putting
up
it
to
together.
That. A lot of years to get up to that. And then in 1988, I went to a bookstore in San Diego, and my wife and we thought, well, let's take a look at some videos. Let's pick out a couple of videos. And I saw this great video. It was on the Kyoto monks. And I thought, oh boy, this is really going to be good. And I said, well, there's this one of the Sai Baba guy. And I thought, well, you know, we'll take this home too, because he probably has something to say. So I thought maybe I'd take that home and I'd watch that and save that Kyoto monks for later this evening, you know, when everybody was, you know, just sitting down for that nice 8 o'clock thing with the popcorn or whatever. And I have to tell you too, when my wife and I got married, the lady that married us was a Sai devotee, and she had just got back from Puttaparthi. And we had vibhuti in the house. I mean, we had all kinds of stuff, things that I didn't pay any attention to. But
was this stuff somebody gave you, or?
Oh yeah. I've been carrying it around. We've been moving, and I've been moving along with it. From one. So I didn't know it's this dust that my wife liked.
What about this video you picked up?
So we took these videos home, and I can't tell you. Just to think about it now, when I forget.
Sounds like
give me a second here.
Sounds like it was a near instantaneous transformation in your spirit.
Well, let's put it this way. I didn't watch the Kyoto monks. You know, I didn't. It absolutely didn't.
Do you remember what video it was that you saw?
It was it was one of the Janet Bach videos, and I think it might have been the early years. It don't matter. All I kept hearing was the for the instruction of the virtuous, for the destruction.